So let's move on to our inspirational keynote speeches. Our first speaker will be Patrick Losch, a forest builder and caretaker. He plays a vital role in promoting the conservation and the protection of Luxembourg's natural heritage and beyond. Beyond only the forestry and the environmental side, he also demonstrated a lot of commitment in working with local communities and making sure that sustainable development is implemented from the get-go in all these projects. Patrick, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, so I have 20 minutes to convince you that Mother Nature very often offers the better solution if you consider her and let her do. Simply let her do. Oh, sorry. No. Sorry. Now it worked. Okay. So I try to do that through examples, to prove that through examples. I start with Luxembourg. And in Luxembourg, we face the climate change already very deeply. Most people haven't noticed it yet, but when you're in the forest, you really see it. The last 5 years were terrible, and they already show us the pattern of climate change that we have to expect for the next years, which is raising temperatures with long periods of drought in summer and with interrupted with flash rains. So we need two adaptations to this. First, we need retention of the flash rain waters to avoid flooding, but mainly we have totally to regenerate our forests, because our forests, 2/3 of our forests are constituted of species which are totally inadapted to this pattern of climate. It's a huge task, no? So let's begin with the retention of water. Sorry. No, that goes backwards. It's a big one. That's easy. Okay, so water retentions. What you do typically, you build a water retention basin. An example, the village of La Rochette, they had a budget of 10 to 20 million, depending on the solution, on the place where they put it, and then came up a smart guy and told them, let's renaturalize the river upstream. The cost 2 million. Great. It's already close to nature, but there's even better. So here comes the foundation, Halle Viert Natur. And the strategy of that foundation is to say, buy land along the headwaters of the rivers, and wait. Wait for what? For the beaver. The beaver is invading Western Europe. And this is great news. You only need to have places where he can settle. Why you need him, or what great job he does, is this: he builds dams. He builds fantastic dams, because they not only retain water, but they also regulate water. So with natural materials like wood, clay, stones, and whatever he finds in nature, he builds these dams, and permanently he works on them, so he adapts them permanently to the situation of the water. So during drought, he will reinforce the dam that the water is retained. When there's too much water, he lets it go gently, because what he wants is to have a pond above, and the pond is meant to protect his lodge, because the entrance to his lodge is underwater, protected from the predators. So that's his drive. No? And it is fantastic. It is the best example I could find for an efficient nature-based solution, because it's extremely cheap and extremely efficient. And fantastic because, in addition, he creates wetlands and alluvial forests with a very high biodiversity. The only point is that, obviously, if you put the land around the river underwater, there's no more use of this land for human purpose. So you take out of the extractive use that land. There are compensation concepts for the people, for the damages, but I think it's not the right way to do it. It's not the compensation for damages. We should pay ecosystem services that these people, these owners of that land offer to the community by leaving this land for the beaver. Oh. No? No? Oh, this is too bad that you can't see it properly. This is a willow tree, not by the beaver. So here you see he needs material to build his dam, but he needs the bark of the material to eat. That is his food. And now you say, okay, you're a forest, you should be mad that he cuts the trees. But the point is that over the thousands of years, the beaver and the willows and the poplars have arranged themselves, kind of. So the willow tree has no problem with being gnawed away because the tree won't die. It will regenerate from the stump, and it will regenerate from the roots. And you see here young trees coming up. And by creating these wetlands, he offers the willow and the poplar, the softwoods, land where it has a niche to survive, because otherwise they would be eliminated by the hardwoods like beech or oak. So they find they have agreed on, let's say, a common way to live together. So then let's come to the forest. Here in Luxembourg, we have 35% of the land is forest. We are very proud of. But if you look to a country like Guatemala, they still have 65% or 64%. We had 98% forest 3,000 years ago when we started to make agriculture. So we are not the right persons to finger point the other countries who still have double the surface of forest than us. And in addition, we have a situation due to the drought, due to the problem we have in our forest, we have a tree cover loss of 1% per year in 21, coming up from 0.32, whereas, for example, Guatemala goes down from 1% to 0.65. I know it's not totally correct to present it this way, because in Luxembourg, if you have tree cover loss, you still have forest land. You're not allowed to change the use of the land. Whereas in Guatemala, it's not allowed to change the use of the land, but it is being done. So we have absolutely to bring the afforestation rate in Luxembourg to the level of our tree cover loss, and we are far away from that. We need to do that to keep the carbon sink of our forests, and we need to improve the resilience of our forest, and we can do that by planting or replacing the dying conifer monocultures with mixed oak stands. So the nature-based solution here is natural regeneration of oak, and it is possible. You see here, it's a 4 years old situation. You have thousands of little oaks coming up, but on this picture, something is hidden, very important. Behind the trees in the background, the fences. So we are facing a terrible problem in Luxembourg. Here you see the situation within the enclosure. You have, in this situation, you have a 1-year-old regeneration of oak, hundreds of trees, little baby trees. And the same situation below the same tree, on the other side of the fence, nothing. Who does that? The cute, little, beautiful, nice deer, terrible deer. And now, why I'm so happy with the beaver and unhappy with the deer? So I'm unhappy with the deer because over the evolution, the deer population has been regulated by super predators, which are bears, which are wolves, which were humans, as long as humans needed meat. My grandfather went hunting, and his main objective was, from time to time, to have a nice piece of meat on the table. The hunters of today, they go for hunting for, okay. So, natural regeneration in the south of the country, the Gutland, is not possible without protection. And in the north, it's even worse. We even hardly have any natural regeneration because the seed trees are missing. Because we had devastated that land now for hundreds of years, the original natural forest has been gone there. And so we have not the trees to have the regeneration. So we need plantation, but the plantation can be done only with protection. And this brings you to a situation like this. This was all a spruce stand. There are some remaining trees you see. They were all killed over the last years by the bark beetle. The bark beetle is a parasite who takes advantage of the temperatures and of the weakness of the tree, because these high temperatures put the trees under stress. On the other hand side, the bark beetle can exponentially multiply, and so you get a situation where you can only lose. And we definitely will lose the spruce tree here in Luxembourg. It won't. And we have 30% of it here in Luxembourg. So, but it's not funny to put all these tubes in the forest, especially as they could cost 200% or double the price than the cost of planting. So this brings you to an explosion of costs. And this is due to the overpopulation of deer, which is due to an still inappropriate mindset of most of the hunters, but especially to the non-effective hunting law we have in the country. So these high investments we need now are not anymore, cannot be justified by the outcome, by the product, by the expected income from the wood at the end of the period, especially as we are going more for oak, which will take 150 years before you will have an income. So you imagine, make your calculation. No? And we have very good subsidies, but unfortunately they are kept by the EU regulations, and due to the fact that 2/3 of the subsidies will go into protection from the deer, so there's not much left to make plantations. So, and the bigger forest owners with large areas, okay, I understand that you favor the smaller ones, but the big ones have also the bigger impact because they have more lands. No? And they are kept in the subsidies, so they are left alone in the rain. The rain, it is not coming, the rain. No, it would be nice to be left alone in the rain, then there would be no problem. So this is So this was supposed to show you the situation. This is a forest we bought at the foundation that for 15 years had been left on its own, because apparently nature will bring it back on its own. But that works only if you have not an overpopulation of deer. So here, after 15 years, the proof, you see only bushes and grass, but you could also have wild a blackberry desert or something else like that, but no forest coming up. No? So, nature-based solutions in Guatemala. With the Forestry and Climate Change Fund, you probably know, we had at the beginning the idea to offer an alternative to teak plantation funds in the tropics through a reforestation fund with local species, and we ended up in the management close to nature management and sustainable use of degraded and secondary forests. Secondary forests are the naturally regrown forest. So in the books, it's told once the tropical forest is cut down, it's lost forever. Not true. It comes back if you give it a chance to do it. 5 million hectares of this type of forest we have only in Central America, 20 more millions in Southern America, and also in Asia and Africa. Just to give you an idea, this was an area, we come to it later, in the middle of the Biosphere Maya Reserve, which had been burned down by narcotraficantes to put up ranches hidden in the beautiful forest, 9,000 hectares in different places. And this is 1 year after the last fire had been put, because they put every year fire to clean the area, to keep it open. 1 year after, 5 years after, 10 years after, 30 years after. Okay, it works probably not in the Amazonas areas when you have 50,000 hectares burned down and no more trees around, it won't work. Here you're still in, especially in Central America, you're still in a rather mosaic way how forest has been destroyed, then you have this chance. So this close to nature management has also costs, but very low costs compared to a plantation. It produces very valuable and wood at a very high biodiversity because we are very close to the natural situation, very efficient and sustainable carbon sink, and especially attractive green jobs in the rural area. Challenge is to build up a value chain for these local species. There are up to 400 species. Nobody knows them. So Costa Rica is importing pine from Chile and from Canada because nobody knows the trees they have and how to use them. Typically a situation of people working now, changing, learning from being cattle raisers to becoming forest caretakers. So the problem we're facing is that we have a 10-year, more or less 10 to 15-year time frame to invest, and it takes about 30 years before you can harvest your trees. So we have a gap. We would need financing to intensify the change, the transition from extensive pasture land to forests. And the idea would be carbon credits. Wouldn't that be perfect? Yeah, it would be perfect, but we will see. So this is situation in Yucatan. Maybe you know it's Mexico, down it's Guatemala, Belize, and you have here the biosphere Maya, this area which is partly still preserved. Here you have a more detailed. The blue line is the limit of the protected area, and here you see that this does not mean much. So there are dents into it. So it's not really helping much to protect something because there's nobody to enforce it, simply. And here we have two examples. One is number one is what the area I showed you before. That's Asociación Selva Maya del Norte. They got a concession in this protected area of 30,000 hectares, where with the sustainable management of the area, they can live on the forest and by that protect, and on the other side protect the forest. However, they have these 9,000 hectares which had been burned down before. The problem is with carbon credits, we can't help them because the calculatory carbon credits are already attributed to the government who has protected the area, but doesn't protect it because has not the means to do it. So the next point is southern border of Bioitza here. That's a second community. Here you see that that is in the buffer zone. Here you see the property of the Bioitza community is where the forest is, and where the property of the Bioitza community is stopping, there is no more forest. So you think that is a very simple and clear situation. Yeah. In addition, Bioitza is the last indigenous community. They own 2,500 hectares, and probably they own, lived on millions of hectares before. Now they have 2,500 hectares. Nobody is really helping them. And they have 1,000 hectares because the farmers burn regularly their land to keep it open, and they don't care, or maybe they can't even take care of it. With the wind, the fire is blown into the forest, and then it destroys part of the forest. No? And then we get a situation, this is in the degraded area, and you could do, with a bit of money, you could restore that area rapidly. And you need fences around to keep the neighbors off and so on. You need a bit money, no? So carbon credits would be perfect, but as you saw here, restoration of degraded forests is not fitting in the pattern of a carbon credit because anyway it's still a forest and it's legally you can't burn it down, and then you have to prove that if you if you have not the carbon credits, this land would be lost. Yeah, but it's obvious next to it, it is being lost. Yeah, but that is not good, that doesn't work, and so on. So it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's such an obvious situation, and there's no way to get the carbon credits for this community. Now and that is, for example, that's a mahogany tree in this forest. When you can sustainably, legally harvest it, it will give a living for a whole year for one family. And it works together with this picture. Maybe you can see it. It's the print of the paw of a jaguar. So both things are absolutely compatible. Now coming to Bangladesh. Here we had an initial objective that we wanted to protect the embankments against the rising sea levels and against the more frequent intense cyclones. And mangroves are a perfect nature-based solution to protect the mud flats, on the mud flats in front of the embankments, because they break the waves on one hand, and they fix the silt. So with a rising level, they go up also. This is a typical place in the delta of Bangladesh. You must know that 80% of the water of the Himalayas comes to this sea at this place. So it is not comparable to Netherlands. I think it's 100 times more water than Netherlands. And it's totally unimaginable that you would build dikes. Here you would need dikes like the Dutch have. But the only thing they have is a bit of mud they put on into an embankment. No? And the poorest are living closest to this critical place. It's obvious. And here we have the still tidal, and at high tide, the water comes to the foot of the embankment, and then imagine a cyclone with 200 km per hour wind, with the waves hitting that embankment. It simply breaks regularly. So this was in June 17. This is just the other side, looking the other side from the first picture. This is the mayor of the community, or the president of Brasilia at that time. So very proud to show us his new embankment they had just built, with all this area in front of it. And then we came up with the idea to plant mangroves in front. So what you see here, maybe you see the mangroves, the planted trees, but mainly you see the fence. So back to the fence. No, there are no deer. No, there are no deer. But there are goats. Goats. No? So we have to keep out the goats, because this area looks like the moon, because of the goats. Because the goats, as soon as something comes out, it immediately is being eaten up. No? So the project had to convince the local people that goats is not good, and find solutions for to have a revenue to replace the loss of the goats, and to have people taking care of the fences to watch that nobody tries to get around the agreement. So this is the situation 3 years later. So fantastic. So it was really amazing to see. And the most amazing was this. The man who had goat before is now fishing for crabs in the mudflats. And we didn't expect it would happen that much, that fast, and it would be at that level. So we want to make a study to find out exactly how to make it by figures. So for now, I just can give you the gut feeling that it really is much more intelligent to have crabs and fish in the mangroves than to have goats on the mudflats. So this is planting the mangrove trees in front of the embankments is a very efficient, in addition to the protection, is a very efficient carbon sink. It helps to recover biodiversity in an environment where hardly any nature is left. And the good story is it's probably a far more productive use of the land than what has been done before. But, and there was always a but, the fences. So the project has considered that for 5 years we pay for caretakers that look after the fences, repair them permanently, and let's say address the community as soon as there is somebody breaking through or doing something not conform. We learned now the goats will be back as soon as the caretaker is not paid anymore. We knew, or we expected that the trees will be big, tall enough to survive. Yes, the trees are surviving. But the trees, the natural regrowth below, the undergrowth is disappearing again. And that's making the breaking of the waves, and that's making the biodiversity, and that bringing back the crab. So we are facing a situation that we need a solution to continue to take care of these fences. And this is a typical situation. For example, here, this is the way the trees look like. This was an area, was all mud, just mud flats, what we saw. With some trees, for some reasons, had survived, and they were left, and the goats couldn't climb up there to destroy them. So as soon as we planted the fences, we didn't even plant trees. We put the fences, and we got this after 2 years as natural regrowth. As soon as you protect it. And now open the fence, this will be gone within half a year. So the idea was to, again, to go for carbon credits. This seems to be so obvious. No, what we got as an answer, in its current configuration, the project is not eligible for carbon certification due to the perceived risk of non-permanence, due to the nature of the land tenure with local authorities. And so here the cat bites its tail. No? So we would need the money to make it permanent. No? Because they believe that it risks to be non-permanent, there's no carbon credit, so we can't do it. So it is kind of very frustrating, isn't it? So lessons learned is that at least the carbon credits as we have it now is something top-down, biased by ideological concepts. And when you go bottom-up on the field, in the ground, the money doesn't arrive because it doesn't consider the realities on the ground. So we have to work on that. You have to work on that. And work also on, we should not only have carbon credits, because we need biodiversity credits. Because what is now eligible? Imagine, in Guatemala, you cut down the secondary forest, the regrowth, because it's considered as being brushes, shrubs. It's not being considered as being forest. You go with the bulldozer through it, you plant teak, and you could get beautiful carbon credits, because you will fix a lot of carbon, apparently, with zero biodiversity. Oh no, there are studies finding out that there are 6 butterflies in the monoculture of the teak. Oh, 6, it's a great number, biodiversity, but they forget that there are 267 butterflies on the field next to it. Last word. Go until the next curve also. Take the last curve. Continue, because nature does not fit on paper. You have to experience it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I think with these examples you're giving, you're really making it tangible for everybody to understand what is actually the work on the ground and how much work it takes, how many people are involved. It's quite a lot of work, clearly.
Apply now